Denny Hamlin gives his thoughts on how close NASCAR and the teams are to getting a deal done, and, well, it gets interesting, so let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, so Denny Hamlin went on the Kenny Wallace Show, episode number 65, or guest appearance number 65. Got the hashtag 65 beside it. That's the thumbnail right there if you want to go look at the whole video. And I will post a link to it in the description down below. But he went on the Kenny Wallace Show, and he had some very interesting things to say about NASCAR, the charter agreements, and various other things. We got a lot to cover, so let's get right into it.
But I want to read this. The RTA was created in 2015 and collaborated with NASCAR, created the charter agreement system, Race Team Alliance. The RTA is currently comprised of 15 race teams, which own the 36 charters in the NASCAR Cup Series. So it's everybody. We are in the fourth quarter right now of this. Next year, the charters are ending here in a minute. Where are we at right now?
Well, I'll first say this. I think that this is the single biggest agreement that has gone through our sport in a very, very long time, and it's important that it gets done. The reason that you gave kind of the history of the RTA, and I'll give you a little more to that, is that originally it was started as these race teams need to get together and find a way to have more, whether it's a common fuel card or whatever. Like, they were trying to not go and negotiate deals, commercial deals independently. We probably can get a better price if we go in independent, if we come together and negotiate fuel deals or tire deals or whatever it is for the haulers. That's where it kind of started, right? Is that how can we come together and start to streamline some of our costs, help, because the cost just keeps getting higher. And
so he talks about the RTA and how originally it was basically endorsed by NASCAR. NASCAR came up with it. And in its original form, it was just the teams trying to figure out the ways to get the best deals. He talked about on gas, like setting a fuel price and things like that. They felt like they could better negotiate it as a group as opposed to each individual team negotiating their own separate contract. So that was the origins of it. And I went back and I looked, and I did find some articles to sort of verify what he's saying there, that yes, it was originally a combination idea between NASCAR and the teams. So NASCAR did want the teams to have a race team alliance.
Sponsorship is starting to level off. And as it went over time, sponsorship started to decline a little bit. Ratings declined with it. And the teams are the ones that felt the most pressure by that, right? There's salaries that got cut. Drivers, employees, everything just started getting cut. All while there is record revenue going into our sport. So that, has brought it to the last few years where, big team owners that have been part of the sport for decades have went to Jim France and says, we need help. Like, our teams are dropping like flies. Like, we have championship teams, boom, out of business. Like, how can we stop this? You guys are doing really, really well. We are struggling.
So you see right there, he says that the sponsorship leveled off, TV ratings dipped, but he said that NASCAR was making record revenue regardless of this, even though the teams were beginning to be up against it because, like I just said, sponsorship money was going down. And he said NASCAR was recording record revenue. I couldn't find anything because NASCAR is a privately owned, a family-owned entity. I couldn't find any records to prove or disprove his claim there. But I will say that I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here because I do feel like NASCAR has made out the last few years. I feel like they have had a successful business model regardless of what you might think of it. I do feel like the record revenue and stuff like that, I do agree with them there, even though I can't really find anything to back it up, but it does logically make sense. Even if it wasn't record revenue, we know for a fact that NASCAR is definitely doing way better than the teams. We can definitely say that for a fact.
They went to Jim asking for help and received back quite simply, sorry, you cut your deal back in 2016 and you're going to live by what that deal is. And this was 5 or so years ago. They came to Jim saying, at least give us a break on our hard cards. No, ain't going to do nothing for you. Live by the deal that you cut. So that put an emphasis in my mind to us saying, we better get this deal right then, because he ain't going to come back and retrade this deal 4 years from now.
So there you go. He's got Jim France saying that, hey, this is the deal that you originally negotiated. We're not going to renegotiate the deal now because things are different. And I don't necessarily have a problem with Jim France taking this hard line approach. It is the deal they signed. You need to live by the deal you signed. That's definitely one way of going about it. So I can't really say anything negative because from Jim France's perspective, it does 100% make sense that, hey, you negotiated this deal, so let's just honor this contract until it runs out. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. However, when you get further and deeper into it, which he's going to get into here next, you do start to paint a different picture as to why these negotiations are becoming more and more tense.
What we've been up against is other leagues that have locked arms and decided that they are going to lock arms with the league and then grow the sport together. NASCAR does that poorly than any other sport by far. Like, ask any sponsor that tries to come in. They say it's the most complicated sport to ever participate in because the tracks own this real estate, NASCAR owns this, the teams own that. Like, it's not homologated, I guess you could say. So we're trying to make it more simple, and we're trying to go to NASCAR and say, let's lock arms. Let's do this together. We'll give you these rights to go shop for us. That way, when you go get an official sponsor, it goes to all of us. Same as what the NBA, the NFL, MLB does. When they go get a league sponsor, every team gets a little piece of that, and then the league gets a portion as well. It's not like that. We compete for the same sponsors that NASCAR does. We have our own sponsors that NASCAR will send their own sponsorship proposal to try to get them to spend money with them. And it's like, but we need them the most because of our business model, right? It costs us $18 million a year to put a car on the racetrack. We've asked NASCAR to just cover our costs. Nothing more, just cover our costs to go put on this show for you. And the answer has been repeatedly, no. You will get what we give you, and you'll like it. And if you don't, then just don't be part of this.
And here's where he makes a really, really great point about the teams wanting to get this charter deal done to make the charters permanent because they want to become partners with NASCAR. He uses the illustration of the sponsor model as it currently stands, where he says, hey, we go after sponsors, but NASCAR goes after the sponsors we get, whereas every other league in professional sports makes it a lot easier because when a sponsor comes in, everybody gets a piece of that money. In Denny's opinion, he wants it cut 3 ways and 3 pretty even ways, whereas this particular current NASCAR model, there's 2 sides that are making out, and he's going to get into that in just a minute, 2 sides that are making out, and the race teams that are putting on the show are getting the short end of the stick. Because it just, I have to agree with him here. It doesn't really make any sense for both entities to be going after sponsors, and you can even throw the tracks in there. The tracks are in there going after sponsors as well. So everybody is coming after these sponsors from 3 different sides. Whereas if this sponsor, say, wants to sponsor the NFL, that, hey, we just sponsor the NFL and all the teams get a piece of that money. I don't have to negotiate with, all 20, I don't even know how many NFL teams there are, 28 NFL teams or whatever, individually if they want sponsor money, and then negotiate with the league, and then negotiate with each stadium that I want to be prepared to spend my money on. They don't have to do that. They just, hey, we're going to sponsor the NFL, and that's the way it's done. Whereas in NASCAR, if you want to sponsor NASCAR, you got to cut a deal with NASCAR. If you want to sponsor a team, you got to cut a deal with a team. And if you want to be at a track, you got to cut a deal with whatever tracks you want to be at. It's just such a convoluted model, and I think he illustrated that pretty well there.
As these negotiations have gone on, there's been no negotiation, Kenny. It's been every response, every proposal they send back to us is worse than the previous. That is factual. It keeps getting worse. So when you ask me where are we at today, we are worse off than we were 2 years ago.
So there you go. To further complicate things, where the race teams want to work with NASCAR as an actual partner, as an actual, I guess, alliance member, part of, the tracks and, NASCAR working together, NASCAR keeps giving them worse and worse deals. NASCAR is playing hardball. And so it paints a very bleak situation for the future, but he does go on to say how he sees negotiations going on from here on, since NASCAR has taken such a hard line approach, and the teams feeling this added pressure because they know that NASCAR won't renegotiate the deal once the deal has already been made, as he alluded to earlier. So you've got these two immovable objects, basically, where the teams are like, hey, we're not going to settle for a poor deal like we did last time. And NASCAR saying, well, hey, here's the deal. You take what we give you. And so you've reached this impasse. So let's see what he thinks about how negotiations are going to go forward.
6 months, 8 months away from the Daytona 500, and there not being any charters. So, and why the race fans should care about that is that the reason Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports show up every week is because there's a charter deal. We get a payment to show up every single week. If there is no charter deal, we will pick and choose what the best paying races are, and we'll go run those races. And then some weeks you won't see us at the racetrack because maybe that race doesn't pay quite as good, or maybe we don't have a sponsor for that race.
The Wood brothers used to do that with David Pearson. They never ran all the races back in Pearson's glory days.
But that's not good, right, for the sport. You want to see your superstars on the racetrack every single week, which is why this charter agreement needs to get done.
So there you go. He wants to get the charter deal done because it's important. And he says if the charter deal doesn't get done, they will just go, as Kenny Wallace pointed out in that particular clip, they'll just do what the Wood brothers did. Hey, if this is a race where we don't think we're going to make money, we just won't race there, and that's going to hurt the overall product. This is almost as bad as a split, right? This isn't even a split. This is just a team saying, hey, if we don't get a charter deal done, we're not going to run all the races. How about that? How about you promote your sport and you don't know which cars are going to be there from week to week? That would be that would be a bad move for everybody. That would be a bad move for NASCAR. That would be a bad move for the teams. And the fans, of course, would get the short end of the stick. The TV contract signed, they're not going to feel good about it if they don't know who's going to race week to week. So that would just be a bad deal for everybody not to get the charter deal done.
I wish I had better news for you, but until we see NASCAR come our way a little bit, I just don't know where this goes, right? I mean, eventually there's going to have to be some pain for somebody in this thing for there to be any sort of resolution, right? No negotiation has ever come easy. No one says, okay, that's what you want? Okay, no problem. We'll go ahead and back the Brinks truck up and we'll just drop the money off to you. It doesn't work that way. Somebody has to feel pain for somebody to budge or move. And I just think that at this point, NASCAR does not feel threatened by the teams whatsoever. I think that they feel like we are all replaceable. You can argue that offline. I have my opinions of that. But these guys helped build the sport for years and years. And when we ask for permanent charters, what we're asking for is long-term asset, something that we can sell if we ever do go out of business, right? We saw with Stewart Haas, at least they didn't leave the sport empty-handed, right? They at least got paid for their charters. That's what we're hoping to get, right? If they're not going to give us enough money to survive year to year, at least give us an asset that is worth something in the long run. You can't say no to both. That is not a fair deal.
And so there you go. That's the part of this that I really wanted to get to. He said somebody's going to have to feel some pain before either side budges. So he feels like for NASCAR to come his way, I'm going to just say what I think he's thinking here. For NASCAR to come his way, the teams are going to have to do something drastic, possibly this season. Because what else are they going to do? Boycott in the off season. So teams are going to have to do something drastic this season to make NASCAR move their way or in their direction somehow, and that's just not a good sign. Like, we don't need any type of protest like this. So hopefully, at least in his opinion, now I've checked as much of this as I could check. Now, just because I couldn't find it doesn't mean some of the stuff isn't out there, but I've verified as much of this as I could verify, and he seems to be basically telling the truth here from what I can tell. So I do have to agree with him that hopefully NASCAR relinquishes its stance on it. But like he was saying there, you know, NASCAR is not just gonna like pony up and give them money. So hopefully NASCAR wisens up, and hopefully the teams can get this deal done, and we can just move forward, and we don't have to talk about this anymore.
It could easily, at the end of this year, charters could not exist. Doesn't NASCAR have a responsibility? Because we just watched some teams pay Gene Haas $25 million. What would happen if at the end of this year, NASCAR said charters don't exist, and they just got done paying Gene Haas $25 million? Does NASCAR have a responsibility? I mean, how could that just all go into thin air?
That's what we're trying to protect against. You're bringing up a very valid point. That's what we're trying to protect against.
It's kindergarten stuff, you know.
I hear you, but this sport is run differently, and it unfortunately is run by someone who says, this is what's worked for 75 years and I'm not changing.
Who's that guy that bought that team, Michael McDowell team? What's that name again? I got brain fade. They just bought the charter.
Front Row.
Okay, so Gene Haas could look at Front Row right now and go, suckers, I got your money. Now you don't even have a charter.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's probably provisions in there. Like, more than likely, Bob Jenkins put provisions in there that says, okay, this deal will go through as long as there are charters.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So
thank
you. You know, attorneys would never put that at risk, I would think.
It's good information.
You know what I mean? To say, okay, we will do this as long as there is a charter agreement and it's by a certain date or something. And if not, if you got to get an extension, you got to get an extension. But you can't sell something that doesn't exist. So I think Gene Haas wants to see this charter deal done, because you can't sell something that doesn't exist, right?
And there right there, the final clip that I'm going to use, he does talk about they just want a permanent asset that they can move forward with so that they know for sure that they can reinvest into it. He doesn't want to scare off, future investors. Like, he was saying there, Michael Jordan's going to be super pissed off, if this isn't the model going forward. He doesn't want something that can just be taken away from him like this. And he also mentioned Gene Haas. Gene Haas wants this deal to get done because he's already signed that deal. And like he said, the lawyers in there are not going to let that deal. They would have a provision in that contract clause. Like, if the charter system went away, the Haas deal, the Gene Haas deal that was signed with Front Row Motorsports would fall apart. So everybody wants to get this deal done. I'm pretty sure NASCAR wants to get this deal done. So hopefully everybody comes to their senses and both sides will budge a little bit and we'll get this thing done going forward. But right now, very, very bleak looking future outlook. So yeah, that's I'm gonna leave you on this one. Like I said, if you want to see the full video, the link is in the description, or you can just go to Kenny Wallace's YouTube channel, and like I said, I showed you what the thumbnail looks like if you want to watch that one, the hashtag 65 with Denny Hamlin on it. All right, that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll keep making these things. And if you want to leave a comment, drop it down in the comments. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.